All right, quiz 2 for Math 65 solutions. The first question, we're given another system of linear equation and asked to solve it, but make sure you use the substitution method. What's that, 4.2 in your book? Okay, so let's see. You have some freedom on what you do here. I mean, the basic idea is to pick one of the equations and solve it for one of the variables, and then plug that into the other equation. The thing that jumps out to me is in this first equation right here, if we solve it for x, we won't end up with any fractions, so that'll make things a little bit easier to substitute back in. And the way I can see that is we're going to have to divide by 2 to get x by itself. But this and this are both even, so we won't end up with any fractions. So if you ended up doing it that way, I guess the first step would be to add 4y to both sides of the equation. And then we've isolated 2x, we want to isolate x, so divide both sides by 2. To be clear, there's lots of other ways you could have attacked this problem. This is the one that jumped out to me as the most straightforward, so hopefully it's what some of you guys did. Okay, so now we know what x is equal to, so we take that x and we plug it into this second equation. So instead of 10 minus 3x plus 2y equals 0, we say 10 minus 3 times this thing, which is x, 2y plus 2, plus 2y, that's this 2y right here, equals 0. And now what we have to do is solve this equation for y. If we take this negative 3 and distribute it through, make sure you distribute the negative 3, not just a 3. Negative 3 times 2y is negative 6y. Negative 3 times positive 2 is negative 6. Then you got the plus 2y equals 0. Let's see now, if we combine like terms, 10 and negative 6 is positive 4. Negative 6 and positive 2y. Negative 6y and positive 2y is negative 4y. So to solve this equation, see, maybe to avoid negative numbers, I'll add 4y to both sides. That gets me here. And then if you divide both sides by 4, you'll just get y equals 1. Okay, and once you know what y is, it's not too hard to figure out what x is. You look up and plug 1 in for y in any of these equations. You could do it here, you could do it here, you could do it here. I guess the easiest would be to do it right here. We'd say instead of x equals 2y plus 2, we'd say x equals 2 times y equals 1 plus 2. 2 times 1 is just 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. So we get for our solution x equals 4, y equals 1. Alright, moving on. In number 2, same thing. Here's a system of linear equations, but this time you're supposed to add them together. Okay, a few things are a little bit tricky here. I think this problem, actually both of these problems, I pulled them straight out of my notes from class. So hopefully we did both of these problems in class. So maybe that'll make this quiz go a little better for people. But at any rate, to solve this problem, I think the way we did it in class is when you're adding equations together, you kind of want the y's, the x's, and then the constant terms to all match up. So I think to get it there, what I would do is I'd be like, all right, on this top equation, they're all to the left of the equal sign. So on this bottom equation, let's move them all to the left of the equal sign. And what I mean by that is let's change this bottom equation into this. If you don't see how I got from here to here, what I did is I added 2x to both sides of the equation, canceled out on the right, and it showed up on the left, which is right here. And then I added 6 to both sides of the equation, canceled out on the right, so we have nothing left on the right, and showed up here. Okay, so now we have two equations. There's one of them, and there's the other one. But the problem is nothing really jumps out that will cancel out too easily. I think what we're going to have to do is multiply this equation by something and multiply this equation by something. You have some freedom on what you pick. Let's see, probably the smallest numbers we could do would be if we tried to cancel out the x's. Right? We could we could multiply this top equation here by 2. And so let's see, how should I write this? This goes over here. If we multiply this equation by 2, we get 10y plus 6x plus 10 equals 0. Now we look at this bottom equation here, and we want to multiply this equation by negative 5. And the reason why is that'll give us negative 10y, which we can cancel out over here. So let's see, 2y times negative 5 is negative 10y. 2x times negative 5 is negative 10x. And 6 times negative 5 is negative 30. And now if we add these equations, 10y plus negative 10y is 0. 6x plus negative 10x is negative 4x. And positive 10 plus negative 30 is negative 20. So now we have to solve this equation. One way to do it would be add 20 to both sides. And you get negative 4x equals 20. And then divide both sides by negative 4. You get x equals 20 divided by negative 4, which is negative, right? Because a positive divided by a negative is a negative. And then 20 divided by 4 is 5. So we figured out that x is equal to negative 5. And now we can plug that back into one of our equations to figure out what y is equal to. Maybe this equation right here, it has 2y solved for, so that's not too far from having y solved for. So let's see, 2y equals negative 2x minus 6, but x is equal to negative 5. So 2y equals negative 2 times negative 5 minus 6. 2y is equal to negative 2 times negative 5. Negative times a negative is a positive. 2 times 5 is 10 minus 6. So 2y equals 4. So y equals 2. So we get as our solution negative 5, positive 2. And that's the end of the quiz.